everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is a retailer from Dublin's Big Bang Comics. It's Bruno Batista. Thanks for coming on, Bruno.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me over. Finally.
You have been on once. And it was a shared episode. This is your first full one, but you have been on, so you can't really say finally.
I know, but I know it's about time because always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Did you work today? Was today work day?
Yeah, today's work day. Today, every day is work day. Even when you're not working, you're always doing something in comics. It never stops.
How was the day at Big Bang? Did you survive?
It was a fine day. We're getting to the time now of the year where people are shopping for Christmas. They're coming in and they're completely clueless about what they want, and they think it's really funny that they don't know what their kids actually like. It's a weird time of the year because you have to be nice to the customers, but you also are going, how can you not know what your kids are into? How can you not listen to them? It happens all the time, unfortunately.
I feel like that is a very common characteristic amongst pretty much all families and all kids. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty transparent about what I like, and every year, like, my family is completely mystified as to what I might like for Christmas. Granted, it's more difficult now that I'm an adult and I have a lot of things and I have the ability to buy myself things, but I'm always just like, I do not hide what I like. I imagine most kids don't either.
One of the things that really gets to me is when the parents say, they told me what they wanted, but I wasn't paying attention because, it's just comics anyways. And you're supposed to agree with them. And they're like, the thing you sell, it's a bit shite anyways. You're like, yeah, funny.
That is very awkward. Friday for most shops, at least from what I understand, is not normally like the busiest day. It's like Tuesday and Wednesday are busier. Saturday is normally busier. The rest of the days are kind of just what they are. Is that the case for you guys? I know that your product lines have kind of shifted. Are Fridays normally calmer days, or is there not really a consistent makeup of what a day looks like?
Normally, like the slowest day will be a Monday. I think that's pretty much for everyone. Tuesday and Wednesday are definitely not the busiest days. The busiest organic days where people come into the shop are normally over the weekends. You also, depending on how we get our deliveries, if we get a big action figure delivery on a Wednesday, it could be our busiest day of the week. But normally the busiest days in store with people actually walking into the store are Saturday and Sunday.
I was going to say, though, I mean, you brought up the action figures thing. I imagine that as your product mix has kind of changed and like the availability of certain things has happened, it's like when you get a big shipment from Hasbro on like a Thursday or Friday or something like that, maybe that's the biggest day of the week, at least in sales, without really planning it because it's just when the product hits?
It's when we get in the product, and also a lot of it's already prepaid because it's been pre-ordered, so we can process them, put them through the till. So all of a sudden we're processing a few tons of action figures on the same day, and that all adds up, yeah.
I do think it's kind of funny, that pre-order thing. Like the fact that you guys can send an email out and say, like, here's comic X or comic Y that's coming out, or here's action figure X or Y that's coming out. Pre-order it on Comic Hub, on our site, and you can, get yours when it comes out. And they have to pay for it up front. I imagine that has just like completely skewed the way you can even look at days, because it's like those sales are happening without, like, you could just be sitting in the shop working and sales are happening without you factoring into it almost.
Prepayment only, at the moment, only works with action figures. It's not rolled out yet for books or for single issues. Something that might happen down the line through Comic Hub, where you'll be able to prepay for your comics. But the other side of it is that the people, they just get an email going, hey, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, your comics are here, they've arrived for you, and they just click on a button and they pay for them online. And we don't interact with them. We just get a notification saying, David Harper paid for his comics, and we pack them all up, put them on a cage to be sent out, and then next day gets picked up, and we'll never see them again. We have a ton of customers we have not seen in person, or rarely seen them in person ever since the pandemic. It changed completely everything.
Do you have any customers you've just never met?
Yes, we have a lot of online customers from all over the country, and even around Europe, that we've never personally met. And then there's people, sometimes you might be doing a show in Dublin Comic Con, or might be doing something in Cork, and someone comes up and goes, hey, I'm Jimmy, I've been a customer of yours for the last 4 years, nice to put a face to your emails. But there's a ton of customers like that we have not seen. Even customers were very regular coming to the shop before the pandemic. And I know I keep saying the pandemic like it's something recent, and it's not at this stage, but it was a big watershed moment, I think, for our shop and the comic business in general. But there's a lot of customers that we haven't seen in person. It's fine. They're still customers. They're still buying stuff. They just find it more convenient to pay for it online and get it delivered.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to Eitan Manhoff from Cape and Cowl Comics in Oakland a while back. I don't even remember when it was. And we were talking, and he was saying about how, like, one of his biggest customers is somebody that, like, could walk into his shop and he would have absolutely no idea it was the person. And it's just because I think he opened his online store in like 2020. They're also a comic hub shop. And when they did that, it like completely changed the complexion and like the relationships he has with his customers, which I find to be really fascinating. It's like, it went from this thing where it's like, you knew like Wednesday is when people come in and they buy their comics, to like
the Wednesday Warriors.
The Wednesday Warriors, to the fact that like now it's just like a lot of them just don't. They just get them shipped to wherever.
No, and it's we know who our big customers are because we have an actual POS system so we can track all those things. And some of them, you might see them once every couple of months when they come in to pick up something, whatever, because otherwise they'll be spending sometimes thousands of euros and just get the stuff shipped.
That's awesome. I mean, good for you, good for them, works for everybody.
It's a very different market, and again, I have to stress that this is what works for us in our shop in Dublin. The experience might not be the same in your local shop, might not be the same in your states, but anything we'll be talking about tonight will be based on the experiences on our shop in Dublin.
Yeah. So before we go any further, I do want to do a quick background on you, because I realize I don't even know your background completely, because let's break it down a little bit. You're from Portugal.
I was born in Lisbon.
Yes.
And I'm in Ireland because of Mark Miller.
Okay,
it's
I was going to say,
Miller's fault.
You ended up in Dublin because you and John Hendrick, also from Big Bang, were both on the Miller World boards, right?
Yeah. So early 2000s, I was working at the time in a comic book shop in Lisbon, anyways. And I was on the Miller World forums, and I joined at the time, not even because of Mark Miller's, more talk about Grant Morrison, ironically enough. And we all got along very well online. And there's a certain number of us from Ireland, the UK, Portugal. Actually, Portugal was just me, but I was still there, and we decided to meet at Bristol Comic Con. It was the first time a lot of us were going to be meeting in person. I went to Bristol Comic Con. I got along with everyone. And there were on the Saturday night of the show at 6 p.m. it was time for Doctor Who. So everyone just scampered off to their rooms to watch Doctor Who, except for me, John, and two friends of ours, both called Mike, and we're like, no. So we went out drinking. We ended up in a Korean karaoke dance pub thing. And we got along really well. And John said to me, "Look, if I ever have a job opening in Dublin, would you like to come up for it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Thinking it's never gonna happen. I'm not even gonna worry about it. And after a couple of months, and again, all of us still talking online and being friendly, he offered me a job. So I got to come over to Dublin, be here for like a week, see if I like the place. And I love it. I love Dublin. I love the people here. They're incredibly friendly and welcoming. And that was 17 years ago, and I'm still here.
That's amazing. I am mostly shocked about the fact that people just would get up and leave when Doctor Who was on. I didn't realize it was that kind of thing.
It was a Bristol Comic Con in the UK, mostly, UK fans. So it was a big, yeah.
I like Doctor Who. I don't know if it would be like, I gotta go because it's on TV. But granted, this was also like 2006?
The entire place, because I think we're out there in the bar area, and the place just emptied. Everyone went to their rooms to go watch Doctor Who, except for like the four of us. And that's how we became such good friends.
They should have just organized a showing where everybody can watch it in like a big room set for the con. It's like, so I've never told you this. I feel like you would appreciate this story. I went to a music festival in Barcelona called Primavera Sound.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I went to Primavera Sound, and it was the same night as a Champions League match between, I want to say, Manchester United and Barcelona. And they shut down one of the stages so they could show the match on it. And I went and I watched with these two Arsenal fans, and it was one of the best times I've ever had doing anything in my entire life. And they should have done that at Bristol. They should have just had a showing where everybody could sit and watch Doctor Who. Maybe they just didn't know about the what would happen at 6 p.m.
We're talking 20 years ago. I don't think that sort of stuff was
That's true.
as as prominent as it is now. Now, if there will be like a big Comic Con and a big episode of something dropping on the Saturday, I think there'll be like a special screening and stuff like that. Back then, no, yeah, you got to go to your room and watch it in the tiny TV if you wanted to, and that was it.
I will say that my music festival was 12 years ago, so it was both a while ago. But 20 years is definitely longer than 12. But so you moved in 2006. Big Bang didn't open until 2011, right?
No, so at the time, John had a shop in Crow Street called the Third Place, and I worked with him for a while, and then I went to work in a bookshop for a number of years, which was Chapters, and he actually gave me a really good upgrade on my skills of having to deal with different books, different customers, having to sell different things. That was really good. And then eventually, John opened his shop in Dundrum, and he lured me back in with promises of, I don't know, amazing comics and stuff like that, and beautiful people like you, and here I am again.
There you go. There you go. It is funny, like looking at Big Bang. You opened in 2011. You actually opened in August of 2011. And that was such an interesting time because it was like literally right as the new 52 launched.
At the time, there was a massive Jim Lee, the promo poster. We just next to the shop there was a massive, I don't know what even size what it is, but it was like the size of a window of a front window of a shop, just the big new 52 Jim Lee poster.
The Justice League one.
Yeah, and it's interesting because no, this is before I worked there. I came to work there like a year after that, but I was friends with John, so I knew a lot of stuff that was happening there. And the shop, because of that, we had a very strong DC following from the beginning. And it was interesting to see that because we're, as a part of a shopping center, you'd be getting a lot of walk-in customers, people that were curious, but not necessarily, knowledgeable or comic fans. It's just they knew, oh, cool, Superman and Batman, let me go in and see what's going on. So the New 52 was the perfect time because we could go, here's an issue one of Batman, here's an issue one of whatever, and it worked really well. And for a number of years, we're primarily a DC shop, and it took a while for Marvel to kind of catch up, and then it was a bit of a back and forth for years. Mm-hmm. But our most popular comic is still, superhero wise, is still Batman.
I do think it's interesting though, because I mean, you came a year later, and even a year later, like 1 year after that was Marvel Now. And there was also like Image was really rising at that time because Saga came out earlier that year in 2012. And it kind of feels like since then it's been basically nonstop change. I am interested in like, what do you feel like the biggest ways Big Bang has evolved over the years, both involving comics and like other product lines that have become a bigger deal in the shop over that stretch?
I think that the biggest evolution is that the fact that we never stop trying, we never stop evolving, we never stop looking at things that we could do better and differently. If the market is going one way, we try. If Image got big, we follow that. We try to follow the trends. We try to anticipate the trends. But in terms of evolution, I think the core message of the shop is still the same: is that we're people that love comics ourselves, and we love to get other people into comics because anyone that works there has read comics for many years and loves comics, loves the idea of comics, and loves that other people get into comics. As the years went by, you start selling more action figures, more merchandise. We were the first people to have pop vinyls in around where we were before they became a thing. And we were also the first people to get out of the pop vinyls because it was just impossible at some stage. But we're always, no matter what happens, at the core, we're just people that love comics. And and we sell action figures, and we sell statues, we sell lightsabers, we sell Star Wars helmets, but that's all anchored by the comics and the graphic novels and everything that we love doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's your foundation, right? Like everything else kind of goes around there. Sometimes like action figures are up. Sometimes, didn't you have like giant Infinity gauntlets you were selling? Like,
oh yeah, like it was a 1-in-1, or sorry, a 1-to-1 replica of the one in the movie. So it was like bigger than my torso, and it was like $2,000 something, and we sold it. There's fans there for everything, but again, you also have to be aware of what the market is, where the market is going, and you have to to move with the times. If we were just doing single issues, we wouldn't be where we are now. If we're just doing graphic novels, we wouldn't be where we are now. Or it's a mixture of all the different things that we're able to do, and it's a mixture of doing them as well as we can. Not just doing them, but trying to do the best we can with them.
So how do you do that? What is the path to not just following the trends, but being ahead of them so you don't like get lost in the mess of everything?
Well, you work too much, you don't sleep that well, you keep checking your emails at 2 in the morning, all those things. There is no secret, recipe. There's no magic bullet here. And again, what works for us will not work for you, will not work for someone else. Different jobs, different experiences, different areas. But I think it's a matter of never resting and never stop, like I said before, trying to evolve and trying to follow the market and anticipate the market. But that is all down to you never stop looking and you never stop thinking and you never stop looking into as many things as you can.
I thought you were going to say you listen to Off Panel and read Sketch, but I guess that's not on the table.
My secret confession is that I barely listen to any comic
I
podcasts,
know you've told me that before. I just cry every time.
unless they're about, like, deep dives of old comic runs, and I listen to the occasional off panel if it's with someone I like, and I read your articles every now and again, and that's it. I don't do anything else in comics. I don't follow anything else. The only things I worry about when it comes to comics, it's what comes on my inbox and what shows up when it's time to order the comic.
Yeah, I mean, you got to listen to your customers, and you also have to pay attention when things start changing in a specific way. Speaking of, well, let's move into the present tense and how things are going at Big Bang. I do have to ask, what's the year been like? Has it been difficult living through the end times of comic shops and the comic book form in general?
It's been a difficult year in the sense that a lot of things are changing, and kind of going back to the conversation we had, like, a couple of months ago, is I think people just don't have as much money as they used to have. There's a lot more difficult decisions being taken. Christmas hasn't really kicked in yet this year, was in previous years. Normally by October we see people buying things for Christmas. Hasn't happened yet. I think people are just, a bit more broke, a bit more fearful. But October as a month was, not the best of Octobers we ever had. But we just, you kind of move on from there. If a month isn't the best, you move on and you try to make the next month the best. It's been a complicated year for all the reasons that people know and people have been talking about online. And I don't know if things are going to change anytime soon, but that means that maybe we have to change. If something isn't doing as well, maybe we need to look into other things that are doing better.
How do you adjust to things that are like completely out of your control? Because what are you supposed to do about the economic environment? What are you supposed to do about people having to tighten their belts, understandably, because of the way things are? There isn't really, like, there isn't an adjustment you can make to that, right?
No, you can kind of, like, for example, so I in the shop, John deals with the action figures and the merchandise. He does the ordering for them. I do the ordering for the comics, the single issues, the graphic novels, the manga. And a lot of it is trying to, see what you sold, trying to anticipate how many you're going to sell, which is comics 101. You have to guess the future when it comes to orders, because nothing is guaranteed, but you have to try to eliminate as much wastage as possible. You have to try to make sure that what you order sells. There's not much stuff being left on the shelf. You have to try to chase, like, I've been dealing a lot with libraries, for example, which is another way of getting more customers. It's another way of getting future customers, because all these kids are going to the library in the school, then want to read the next volume of the series that they get. It's a matter of trying to, again, to stay ahead of things as much as you can, which is, as you know, impossible. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's important that we don't depend on a few big customers. That happens sometimes with a few shops where they have, like, 3 or 4 really good customers, and if they disappear, the shop is in dire straits. We're not like that. We have a lot of customers. We have a lot of walk-in customers. We have a lot of online, customers that we might see once and never again, but doesn't matter. They're all customers. But it is very difficult to day-to-day basis, and not just for comics, for any business that deals with the public and deals with things that are not set in stone. You never know what's going to be the next big hit. You never know what's going to stop selling. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And the best you can do is try to anticipate based on the numbers of things you sold before, what might happen in the future, how can you get more customers, how can you diversify the product range, how can you offer things that you haven't offered yet.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Do you wish that buying and reading digital comics was even easier? Well, I have good news. Omnibus is here for you. Omnibus is a modern digital comic book store and reader app carrying your favorite single issues, volumes, and omnibuses all day and date. They're pay per book, just like your LCS, but digital, so you're already used to the experience. Their focus is on building an excellent customer shopping and reading experience and using novel discovery features to help fans find their next new favorite book. They feature top-tier content and already have many of the top publishers in comics today on board. Want to find the right digital comic shop for you? Download Omnibus today on the Apple App Store to do just that. And now, back to the show. What are you doing with libraries? Are you providing inventory for them, or what is that?
It is. It's we've had libraries that come into us and go, look, I have a budget to spend. I don't know where to even start.
So you're like a curator.
Yeah. So you might be, sometimes they'll tell you it's for 12-year-olds and, it's for 14-year-olds, it's for 18-year-olds. I want this thing, this sort of thing. They ask for a few things, what you recommend, what can you, what you think is appropriate for them. Some of the librarians will come into the shop, we'll have a chat, I'll show them a few different things. And there are things, for example, My Hero Academia, it's one of the biggest books in the world, and so many librarians will not touch it because the back cover of volume 1 shows a tightly dressed woman. And I think it's like an in-world ad for Miss Mountain, but so many librarians will not go near that because of that. So there is a degree of curating. There's a degree of, I know the cover looks weird, but actually it's very good inside, and people are going to love it. We're very experienced. We know what these kids love. There's librarians that absolutely know what they want and they're great and they can make requests. There's librarians that have no idea, but it's fine. We're there to help. What we find is that constantly, even librarians that are a bit not sure about if it's the right move to get graphic novels for schools, because God no, graphic novels are for kids, haha, comics. They say that they never have seen the kids so excited from new additions to the library. And immediately there's like more requests, and okay, right, do you have like the next couple of volumes? Do you have the box sets? It's been really interesting. It's by no means a big part of the business, but it's something that we're very keen on cultivating, not only because we love money, but also because I do feel really strongly about getting more graphic novels into the hands of as many people as possible, and especially into like a setting like a school library where kids feel comfortable and feel at ease about trying new things.
Well, and also it's like an investment in your future and their future, in the sense that, let's say they read My Hero Academia Volume 1 and they can't, Volume 2's checked out or something like that. They fall in love with the first volume. They're like, I got to get more of this. And the next thing you know,
we've absolutely had people coming in because they're like, oh, my son read volume 1 of my Full Metal Alchemist in the library. They can get to. Do you have it here? Do you have the next couple of volumes? It works that way.
That's why I own all of 20th Century Boys, is I got very impatient about my library having certain volumes out of stock. So I was like, screw it, I'm just buying all of it. Also because...
But it happens all the time. And you see so many kids who then kind of find out about us and come in. And you see so many parents then they go, oh, it's okay for them to read comics because they get them in the school library. It opens the doors to all these things. We still deal with, there's still a number of parents who'll come in with the kids and they're rolling their eyes because, oh, I can't believe comics. Oh, whatever. Back in my day, I used to read the Beano, and I can't believe they still do comics. And the parents are, obviously not everyone thank God, but some of them are so against the comics because they just think of them as dumb literature. It's not actual books. And then they see the kids getting enthused and reading more and asking for more. And begrudgingly, they start to accept that, you know what, this might be good for my kid.
I had a couple of friends of mine, their daughter got really into reading comics, partially because I gave them Amulet and I gave them Bone, and their daughter loved it. Actually, I also gave her Smile by Raina Telgemeier. We went to this like speaking thing that Raina Telgemeier did here, and afterwards, like during it, actually, she recommended everyone should read Yotsuba. Nobody knew what she was talking about, so I ended up being the guide to finding Yotsuba. And next thing you know, they were like, "Can you meet us and our daughter at Barnes and Noble so we can like find manga together. And I was just like, how did I become a curator for children? I guess that's your job. That's part of your job.
You end up becoming a curator just by being there and knowing a little bit and being enthusiastic and wanting to help other people. And
Yeah.
that's all it takes.
Yeah, that's the not the key to success, but a key to success. But I do have to ask about your product mix right now. Previously, I remember I think that when I've talked to John, it was kind of an even split between graphic novels and single issues. I know that that is definitely or that has changed to some degree. What is your mix right now between, say, graphic novels, single issues, and other product lines? Is like it a pretty even split? Is it changing? What's that like?
No, from the top of my head, I think action figures are around 50%, and then graphic novel slash manga slash OGNs probably around 35%, and the rest will be single issues.
15%.
Uh, okay, let's say 30% for graphic novels and everything, and then 20% for single issues. Single issues are not the market that they used to be. And that is not, old comics are dying, it's the end of the world. It's not. Things just change. People are buying less things because they have less money. People are buying less things because they don't necessarily appreciate the content, or they're buying less things because there's less things actually being put out. I do think when you look at what's coming out and you take away the extra number of covers, there's less stuff for people to buy.
Yeah. Do you feel like beyond the online store element that customer behavior has changed in a meaningful way since since the peak of the pandemic, since the advent of the pandemic, I guess?
I don't know. That's a difficult question because there's so many things we just take for normal. Sometimes you have to kind of remove yourself from a situation to see what changed. But if you're it's the thing of the boiling frog. If you keep raising the temperature of the water, it doesn't notice the difference. It's like us, we're there with the customers every single day. I don't think I could honestly say what's different, but if I pull myself out for 6 months and maybe jump back in and go, oh wow, totally different now. I do think that after the pandemic and completely taking away the online aspect of it, there was people were joyous to be back and spending money, and there was money to spend because everyone was stuck home for months not doing much. And now it's very different. And again, it all goes back to the money situation. There's just less money. There's more, like all the prices are rising. As a small example, our paper bags now cost twice what they used to cost back then. And back then, I mean, like 2 years ago. And when you think of the thousands of bags we go through, it's a massive, massive difference. That's just like a little example of something that affects a day-to-day business. But the same way we're having that problem, you're having that problem as a customer. You're spending more money on your mortgage. You're spending more money in the supermarket. All those things are going to give you less money to spend in the comic shop.
We're all the boiling frog.
I think that the direct market is the boiling frog. I think direct market has always been the boiling frog. Sometimes the water gets warmer. Sometimes the water gets colder. Sometimes everything is great. After the pandemic, it was like, it's almost like we were Bitcoin people. Everything was great. The future was coming. Comic shops were the bee's knees, and now everything is dark, and we're all gonna die next year.
Well, that's unfortunate, but we're going to continue this conversation as if that's not going to happen. But comic-wise, in specific, I want to separate the action figures because obviously that's a big part of what you do. But what's working in the shop in this year? Is there something that has stood out comic-wise?
I think quality always stands out. I think quality gets recognized, and for example, our biggest hit of the year has been Transformers issue 1, the Daniel Warren Johnson, and that's partly because we're a big Transformer shop. It's partly because it's Transformers, it's a well-known brand, and it's partly because Daniel Warren Johnson is like one of the best creators in comics by far. It's just amazing. But even in the old days of IDW Transformers, we were selling, I don't know, a tenth of what we're selling now of Transformers issue 1. And part of it's because you gave people a new issue 1, a new jumping on point altogether. And a part of it's because the comic is just really, really good. And it's easy to get people excited for something when we're excited for it. And I remember when I read the comic, and I'm not a Transformers guy. I'm not like, John's the Transformers guy.
Yes,
I remember reading oh God, yes. I remember reading the first issue and being incredibly excited because it was so good, and I could not wait to get into people's hands. So I just email sold it that way. We make sure to put out like a little through Comic Hub. You can do marketing, for people. So if you buy this comic, you might like this comic. If you subscribe to this comic, we can recommend you something. And we made a point to recommend Transformers, and it was our biggest hit of the year. Outside of that, there's I don't want to say that nothing has stood out. There's been a lot of really good things, but the numbers are just okay. There's not many spikes like we see with Transformers that we can immediately go, oh wow, that's something that happened. It's just the way the market is. It's just the way that I think people are going through a lot of they're buying things out of the habits more than I really like this thing. A lot of people are just there's so many customers I talk to, and I go, so like what's the last issue you read? They're like, oh, it's been a couple of months now since I've read Amazing Spider-Man or Batman, whatever. They're buying things because they've always bought Spider-Man, because they always bought Batman, so they keep buying the next issue. There's very few things I see people excited for. The one thing, and again, going back to this, I've seen people excited the most about single issues was Transformers.
I actually want to talk about the Comic Hub part of it. So the marketing elements, can you notify people who have, say, bought previous Daniel Warren Johnson books, and then also people who have bought previous Transformers books and everything like that, and be like, hey, just to let you know, there's this new thing coming out. You should definitely get it.
You can select, people that bought do a power bomb, and people that were down for the previous Transformers series, and people that like just really good action comics based on their previous purchases. And you click, and you put like, hey, this thing is coming out on this day. It's going to be this price. Here's the cover. We really like it. Here's the link to an interview online, and all the people get the email straight away. And that is completely invaluable because you're literally so many of the comics marketing online is based on assuming people have seen things, that people know what's coming out and know when it's coming out. And let me tell you, as someone that works in the front lines, someone that is with customers, 90% of them have no idea. They don't know what's coming. They don't know when it's coming. They don't know if it's a one shot, a series, a mini series. They have no idea. So that a shop can just send an email and go, hey, you like this thing? Here's this other thing you might like. Invaluable.
We've talked about this privately before, but it's just there's so many books today that there are like Marvel, DC, and Image comics that come out where they're out or have been out for a while. And I had no idea that they existed. And they feature like top name creators, and they featured top name characters. And I would say I'm probably, a high percentile person in terms of awareness of what's going on in comics. And I'm still missing on that stuff. So that type of thing is super invaluable because it gives you the ability to, with a click of a button, effectively do marketing. But is that something you can implement on a broader scale, or do you mostly save it for things like Transformers?
Oh no, every week we do, when FOC comes around, we send emails going, hey, you bought this thing, you might like this thing. You were down for this series, here's the new volume of the series. We can do things like that, and we do like every weekend, every Saturday, we send out emails that go, if you like Batman, is a new Batman series. If you like you're buying Captain America before, is the new Captain America series. You might like this. It's something very simple, it's something very basic, and it's also something that customers do generally appreciate, that we're giving them a heads up of something. You're giving them the option of them following the series that they used to love, but then just didn't realize there's a season 2 coming or something at the start. It's a way of raising the profile of stuff that, like you said, as a customer, you don't even know that something is coming out. It just one day it's there. And because so many more people are not coming into the store and they're just buying stuff online, they don't get to shelf browse. They don't get to look at things as they come out. They just one day go, oh, wow, this is like out by issue 3. I didn't even know this was a thing.
I remember I did this piece a while back talking to readers, like talking to customers. And this one talked about how he had switched. So he basically I think he would order through Comic Hub, and then he would just walk in, get his books, and he would walk out. And that was like the totality of his comic shop experience. And he said that one thing that he really missed about it is that he wouldn't be in there on a Wednesday hearing about what are cool new books. And he found that discoverability really kind of bottomed out because of that.
A list in our shop that has definitely happened. People aren't really talking to each other because, back in the day, you'd be, Dave will be there picking his comics, and Bruno will be picking his comics, and they go, oh, well, you like that? I like this. What do you think of that? And there'll be people will talk and they share, here's something I'm liking, here's something that you like, let's buy these things. And now you either have people that come in, like you said, and they just kind of pick up their stash and leave, or they buy them online, we don't even see them. It's a different market. It's a different way of selling comics. It's not a wrong way of selling comics. It's not the best way of selling comics, not the worst way, it's just a different way of selling comics. It's a different way of dealing with the public. It's a different way of alerting the public. So what? They're still customers, that we know for the last 11 years, and they come in and we might be there talking for ages. We would recommend stuff, but those are more and more the exception rather than the rule. Also, because there's a lot of new customers that are not trained like that. A lot of people that think of comics that way. It's the Wednesday thing or Tuesday thing, depending where you are. And you go in and you get your comics and you talk to the person at the counter. That's more of an old school way of buying comics. The modern people, sorry, the younger people are a lot of times don't even want to interact. They want to buy their stuff from the shelf and leave. They don't want to be talked to. They don't want to do anything like that. Not everyone wants to talk about recommendations. Not everyone wants to be told you should read this and you should read that. It's something also that we have to kind of get to know the customers and get to see what works for different people. Again, it's different when you're dealing with a Wednesday warrior that's been buying comics for the last 20 years versus someone that comes in to pick up their latest volume of manga and knows exactly what they're getting and nothing else.
Pretty sure you just called me old, basically.
We're all old, David.
I'm not old. I may have Reed Richards' hair, but I'm not old. No, I am old. Whatever. I feel young, Bruno.
You're mature.
I'm
but
mature.
I have so many talks with customers around my age. So I'm 43, and there's dozens of us, and we all share the same background. We all share the same way of reading comics, of buying comics. We all used to read Wizard back in the day, and it's the people now, the younger people getting into comics are totally different, and they're buying different things in a different way. They're coming from a different point of view. They're coming from different discoverability points. They don't find things out like we do. A lot of them just find stuff on Instagram or Book Talk or whatever, Comic Talk. I don't know if there's such a thing. It's different.
You mentioned earlier that quality is the most consistent driver, and I've seen that line said several times recently, particularly on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it, in response to a piece that we will talk about at a certain point during this conversation. And I find that idea to be fascinating because quality has this kind of ephemeral feel to it where it's like, it's very relative and it's very subjective. And it's hard to say, like, I could tell you that Wild's End, the Boom series, is the best comic of 2023 and sincerely mean it. But that doesn't necessarily mean every person would actually agree with that sentiment necessarily. How do you, how do you quantify the impact of quality? Because I find that to be, it's so difficult. Like, you could tell everyone that Peacemaker Tries Hard is the best comic or something like that.
I love that series. It's so much fun. And I'm looking forward to actually being able to sell. I think you can, as cliche as it is, a lot of comics, and by comics, I mean mostly single issues. A lot of them are meat and potatoes. They're your basic run-of-the-mill ongoing series where things happen because they have to happen because they need to keep the IP in print. Every now and again, you get an amazing run as part of a long-standing series, and people will come out for that. But I do think that quality and quality creators do rise to the top organically, even with the less of a vocal recommendation system that we have now. Things that are good they're out there and they get popular just by being good. Great creators are talked about and the word gets spread, and then someone starts coming in, okay, I heard this thing is really good, do you have that? And it's easy it's very easy for something to get lost in the middle of Wild's End, to get lost in the middle of the other 57,000 comics that came out that year. But I generally think that something good, if it's championed by people that love it, has legs to run.
Kaiju Max's day is coming, is what you're saying. Yes.
Kaiju Max, one day you'll get a Netflix series, and then we'll be selling those compendiums left and right.
That'll be the day that both Xander Cannon and I will cry out of the beauty of the situation. But okay, I want to talk about, I told you beforehand, I want to talk about a few notable releases for varying releases or efforts for varying reasons and how they've been doing in the shop. One of them you already covered. You talked about Transformers. It's very unsurprising that Transformers #1 did really well for you. Near as I can tell, it did really well for everybody. Here's the question. Transformers #2 came out this week. How did that do?
It sold out. I need to reorder more copies. I actually thought one of the things, because we had our own variant for Transformers issue 1, it was like a store variant. And so, when I look at the orders, I can see what we sold of issue 1, what we sold of the variant covers. And I think when I was doing the orders, because you're always fearful that when you're ordering an issue 2, that the people that bought issue 1 might not come back for it. Or with a lot of people that were buying, 4 or 5 covers of issue 1, and they might just buy the one cover of issue 2. So you have to be careful that you don't overindulge yourself, and all of a sudden you're stuck with 50 copies on the shelf that no one's going to want. And I might have been a bit too conservative, or I might just been like the right amount, because I think I have 1 copy left of this morning, but it's fine. I have more coming. There'll be a second printing. I'm very happy with the numbers. And again, and this is the case, it's the rare case of a big IP that people, you'd think they'll buy anyways because it's Transformers, but it's also a quality issue. It's also when you get a really top creator doing an amazing story that he obviously feels really, really heavily for.
Ireland's own Nick Roach is crying at this point during the podcast. I'm sorry, Nick.
At no moment am I saying that the previous efforts from the the previous creative teams were different, but they suffered from being a more complicated continuity.
Yeah.
They suffered from being a thing that was going on for years versus you can go, hey, here's issue 1 of this. It starts here. Everything starts here. You can go from there.
And it's also very much a Daniel Warren Johnson comic, so it works out really well in that regard. Have you found that you've had... I don't want to say similar because obviously the top selling comic, you can't really compare it, but have the other aspects of Energon Universe, like Void Rivals and the upcoming Duke series and things like that?
Honestly, Void Rivals sells more than Saga does for us.
Whoa! That I wouldn't have bet on.
But turns out if you give people something fun and that, with a few mysteries that they want to read, and it works. And I'm saying this as someone that sells a lot of Saga. We just, at the moment, we actually sell more of Void Rivals because people were very excited.
It's a good book too.
It is. But one of the things that has been missing for a lot of comics is the excitement level. Is people being hyped for something, people getting surprised, and people, it just hasn't happened in a while. And I think Void Rivals tapped into that and created this new universe, and people got excited. And it's not just because it's Transformers and G.I. Joe, it's because it's something that's been fun and people want to see more of it.
Also, I think they've been really smart in how they've kind of laid this stuff out. Like Void Rivals, every single issue has had like one little touch of Universal stuff, as well as like the rest of the main story that's going on. Like you're having like all these characters that you recognize, like Jetfire and those weird dudes with tentacles that like judge people from Transformers the movie. I forgot what their names. Somebody's gonna get super mad at me. It's probably John that's gonna get mad at me about that one.
I'm thinking the quintessence, but I don't think that's the same universe. But John will know. It's fine. I'll ask him afterwards.
Anyways, so you have those, or like in the most recent issue of the Transformers, you find that this one character that was in a spoilers for Transformers #2, you find out that this one character that is in a jet that gets shot down by Starscream because Starscream's an asshole is Duke, the character that will now star in a series from Joshua Williamson and Tom Riley. That stuff is super smart in the way it kind of connects the stuff.
It's smart. It's not beating you over the head with it. It's not like, hey, look at us. Look at this thing. It's not like that. It's something that's there. You go, oh, what's going on there? Let me find out. Oh, there's a book with this guy. Let me see. It's not you have to read it. It's not, follow the ongoing adventures. It's not a lot of the things you see, for example, from Marvel or DC when they're doing that sort of stuff. They beat you over that with it. Here's our, amazing new character. And you have to follow it here and you have to follow it there. Did I tell you how amazing it is? Let me give you like another splash page. Let me put it on the cover. It's not like that. The Energon Universe has been really well thought out. It's been something that's been carefully teased. And it also, I think, comes from a place of love, which, as cliche as it is, I think it means a lot when you're reading comics. The people actually working in the comics love the characters and love what they're doing.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Marvel then. I had to talk about the rare double Jonathan Hickman of late with Gods and then Ultimate Invasion and Ultimate Universe. Ultimate Universe #1 just hit, I think, last week, and Gods #2 arrived this week. I am very interested and concerned by what I'm going to learn about this. How have they done?
They definitely could have done better if the price point wasn't that high.
Yeah.
They started, and I think they were like $9.99 for issue 1.
For Gods,
yeah, and I know like CB Cebulski said on Twitter that was like, Jonathan Hickman's choice as a creative choice. He didn't want to break up the story. But I think immediately, if you're pricing your issue 1 the same price as a volume 1 of a graphic novel series, you're pricing yourself out of so many customers' price ranges. And it could be that they're going to wait for the graphic novel instead because they're going to save money. It could be that just like, I'm not spending $10 on a single issue of whatever it is. I think it was, in terms of the launch, the price points didn't kill it, but definitely made it a lot harder to sell.
Well, and you had to order lighter too because you just didn't have the pre-orders backing it, right?
The first thing, for God suffered from a lack of knowledge of people actually knowing what it was. What was the point of that? Who are all these people running around? Here's this big new thing, and the entire premise was it's selling because it's Jonathan Hickman.
Right.
And that's fine. But then if you have the mix of, and a lot of these people are Marvel fans. They like their characters, they like their stories, they like the stories with the characters that they know, and they've been asked to buy into like this new corner of the universe featuring people they've never seen before. And by the way, first issue is $9.99.
Tough sell.
It's a difficult one, and a lot of customers go, I need to know more about this. The Ultimate Universe is a different situation with similar premises. It's different because the customers know the characters, the customers know exactly what the Ultimate Universe is, but again, it comes up at a much higher price point than your normal comic. So you're buying it and you're making a conscious decision of spending, I'm going to spend as much money as I'm spending 2 comics to get this 1 comic. Right. And at the end, sometimes they go, was this as good as 2 comics? Was it worth my money? And taking away completely the quality side of these releases. People make choices with their wallet all the time. In comics, outside of comics, you have to think of how much money you're going to spend, if it's going to be worth it. And sometimes they go, I'm not spending that much money on a single issue. I'm not. And that's it. And as good as it is, if you try to go, but it's Ultimate Universe, the characters, they go, yeah, no, I'm not spending that much money. It's too much.
Well, and the funny thing is it's not even the Ultimate Universe. It's a new Ultimate Universe. It's, what is it, 60-10 instead of 16-10 or something like that?
I am not even getting into that because God knows.
I know.
I'm very optimistic. I do like the comics. I like what I'm reading. I like God. I know. In all fairness, I like Gods. I like the Ultimate comics. I'm curious to see where they're going. But taking away all the quality issues, it was a price point problem, and the price point just completely killed the initial momentum of the book.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. We're heading into the end of the year, but the campaigns keep launching on Zoop. There's still time to support the legendary Howard Chaykin's campaign and descendant of Bram Stoker, Dacre Stoker's Tale of Dracula, and keeping it spooky as Ghosts from Cullen Bunn and Shannon Eric Denton. Finally, you do not want to miss out on the launch of an artisan edition book featuring John Buscema, Gil Kane, Barry Windsor-Smith, and other A-list artists. Head over to zoop.gg to support the live campaigns and sign up for the ones coming soon. It takes less than 30 seconds to create an account, and the e-commerce style checkout is easy and intuitive. Add multiple rewards and add-ons into your cart, provide some info during checkout, and you're done. No confusing additional steps in finalizing your pledge, and no post-campaign surveys. And of course, every creator appreciates your support. For creators looking to crowdfund your project, Zoop is currently open for submissions. Email them at hello@wearezoop.com to start a campaign. And now, back to the show. That was one of the things I thought was really interesting is like when CB got back, or when he responded to you on Twitter, or you being the Big Bang account about Gods, he said basically it was a content request by Hickman to make it triple size because he didn't want to break up the story. That I get. It was still a choice to make it the price point it was. Like, you didn't have to triple size the price. You could have made it a loss leader. You could have made it something where they were just trying to launch a book in a very successful way with an oversized...
In the current market, we're never going to see, what was it called? The countdown to Infinite Earths.
Oh, yeah.
One shot from DC that was $1. That's never going to happen again. But like you said, there are choices and there are ways of doing things. And I understand that, the creators did not want to break up the book, but Marvel could have tried something different.
Yes. I did think it was interesting. I'm not saying he's blaming Hickman, but it's just like it's true that they were respecting the decision, but it was also like a decision that could have been $8.99 like Ultimate Invasion. It could have been $6.99. It could have been all kinds of prices. Regardless, you guys do well with Spider-Man, right? Generally speaking.
Yeah, no. Amazing Spider-Man is still our number one Marvel comic on a regular basis. Yeah.
Do you think that the Hickman and Marco Hito Ultimate Spider-Man will perform differently in a meaningful way than those other Hickman books, and maybe even Amazing Spider-Man?
I'm very curious to see how this is going to go, because the idea of people's Ultimate Spider-Man might not be what we're going to get.
In what sense?
This might be a thing that's very much a part of that particular universe. It's like a cornerstone of the universe, whereas the Ultimate Spider-Man that people loved was kind of its own thing. Eventually, it became a part of the big Ultimate Universe, but it was something you could just pick up and start from issue 1, and it was a unique story. And I'm not sure if the new series is going to be like that. I'm not sure if issue one is going to be new reader friendly. Right now, if you pick up Ultimate Universe, you go, who's the maker? What's going on? Who's like, Howard Stark? There's all these questions going on. And Ultimate Universe, even today, I had like a kid coming in looking for the Ultimate Spider-Man because he saw a recommendation. Now, he meant the Brian Michael Bendis, Michael Bailey one, Mark Bagley one from back in the day, because these things are still being recommended even if they're out of print. But you could give a volume one of Ultimate Spider-Man to a kid, be like, yeah, that's deadly. I'm not sure if we're going to get the same thing from the new Hickman series.
I mean, it strikes me as Marvel having their cake and eating it too, where they can have the regular universe, MJ and Peter broken up, and this one they're together. At the same time, I also think Hickman's going to have a really good time with it. I know Marco always wanted to draw Spider-Man, and so I think it's going to be a good book. I am just interested to see how it goes, because I know Amazing Spider-Man fans have been moderately vocal about their opinions of the couple being broken up, and I'm interested to see if this is one of those situations where they vote with their dollar in a very passionate way to be like, look.
Again, don't get me wrong. One thing, it's me as a fan, and I'm really looking forward to anything that Hickman does. I've always loved Hickman since Pax Romana back in the day. I'm looking forward to all these new things. But as a retailer, as someone that actually has to order these books in a way that how many am I going to sell of that? These are all the things I have to think about. I can't just think how cool it's going to be.
Oh, sure.
I have to think how cool is it going to be, and who is it going to sell to? How can I promote this? Who do I sell it to? Can I sell it to people that are reading Amazing Spider-Man at the moment? Do I go for new markets? It's all these things that go in the back of my head every time I sit down to do like a monthly initial order.
Times 600.
Yes, and that is crazy because the amount of time you spend sitting at the computer going. And like I said before, I don't really read like the comics media. I don't really read those news. All I do is eventually, around the 20th, I sit down, I open Comic Hub, I go to my initial orders page, and I start my initial orders. And the amount of times I go, wait, what? What is this comic? Like, I have no idea. But it's fine because I know I see it there and I can order stuff. I know I have like some information about how to order it. But these are all the things you have to think about when you're a retailer. It's not, I really like Spider-Man. It's, who can I sell Spider-Man to?
Right. You got to separate yourself from it. Okay, another one I want to ask really quickly. Unnatural Order, Vault Book, #1, free to order, where you had to order in bundles of 25. How many did you order, and what did you charge for it?
I ordered one bundle, and I charged €1 per, so $1 per issue, just to kind of pay for the shipping costs. I ordered low because, unfortunately, Vault used to be a really big publisher for us, very, very popular. And through the years, and there's a lot of problems with deadlines and books coming and going and not, making it to the end. And we've lost a lot of the readership. I think we have one loyal Vault customer, and he was the only person that asked me about Unnatural Order in advance. No one else did. So I think even pricing it at €1, I think I sold maybe 3 copies out of the 25. It for us, it was not a success. It's great that a publisher can say, "Look, we sold 100,000 copies." You didn't. They were free, and you told retailers how much you want them to order. It's manipulating the numbers for the sake of it, because no one wins with this. I don't think that there's anything to be won here by saying we are the best. I could be the best if I give away everything I have in the shop. It doesn't make sense.
Especially if it was a $2,000 Infinity Gauntlet. That would be quite the loss for you guys, though. Quite the loss.
That was so cool, though. So cool.
Didn't you have a picture with it? I think you sent me a picture of you, like...
At one stage, because we had a picture, and I had that one, and so there was a little thing inside we can kind of grab it. So I had that one on my hand, and John had the normal plastic Infinity Gauntlet. It kind of looked like I was compensating for something else, but it was a great picture.
The Unnatural Order thing, I understand the logic behind it. The hope is that would stoke the flames of readership, and then what would happen is #2's orders would be better. And I imagine there's a ton of variance depending on how each shop rolled it out. It's pretty easy to say yes to a free comic if the shop gives it out. I know a lot of shops did give them away.
Some shops were giving them away. Some shops were doing a thing where actually you pay for one, but you get 2 free if you order 1 and 2. There's different ways of doing things. It's just, at the end of the day, you only have so much time.
Oh, sure.
For work. And I have to make decisions of where am I going to invest my time? Is it going to be worth it if I put my time into, promoting this comic and getting more customers? Will I get the return? Or at the end of the day, I'm going to do all these things and get 3 orders for it.
Yeah. Okay. Last one I want to talk about: Dawn of DC post Night Terrors. You had told me previously that you were very annoyed about Dawn of DC launching, doing well, and then Night Terrors coming up right in the midst of it and basically like making everything go away for 2 months.
I've been very vocal online about it. And for the record, anytime you see a tweet or a blue sky from the Big Bang Comics account giving out about something, it's me. It's always me. It's never John. It's never, and people go, "Oh, I can't believe you said it." No, it's me. But I think there was a massive failure of messaging here. You relaunch your line, or you do a soft reboot, whatever you have to call it. It's called Dawn of DC. The promo art is like, beautiful dawn, and everyone is smiling, everyone is happy, everything is brilliant. And then your next big thing is Night Terrors. It's like, ooh, nightmares. What is wrong with having some fun comics for a while? And you don't have to make it as dark as possible in 2 months' time. And not only that, it completely killed the momentum of a lot of new series like Green Lantern, for example, Green Arrow, things that were doing well, and all of a sudden they literally got the rug yanked, off them because customers couldn't get the next issue of Green Lantern. Customers didn't remember to come back in 2 months to get the next issue of Green Lantern. I don't understand what was the thinking behind it. I assume there's some corporate reason for that. Someone said it's a good idea to do this, but it was not. I said on Twitter many times, and I said this thing, it just did not work. And unfortunately, my fears became true when I saw the sales after the event. And for a lot of DC stuff, we just lost 20-30% of the customers for no reason.
For the Dawn of DC books, or just everything in general?
For the Dawn of DC books, like I said, like the Green Lantern relaunch that I really like. And I really, really like Jeremy Adams. I think he writes some amazing, fun comics. And he's running for Flash. He did amazing things with Wally West. So he even got me to read a Hal Jordan comic, and it's been very fun. But all of a sudden, those customers, they were there and they were enjoying it. Came back next week or next month to see some nightmare insomnia thing. It's not the way you should be doing this. You shouldn't be shooting yourself in the foot as often as comic companies do.
I love that you just put in some just low-key shade to Hal Jordan just in the midst of it was very smooth. I liked it.
Hal Jordan is historically problematic in many, many ways. We can have a side podcast if you want to about all these characters, but we don't have time for it tonight.
I mean, my first comic I ever read of Green Lantern was Emerald Twilight, where he murders like most of the Guardians, or not the Guardians, the rest of the Green Lanterns, and I think he actually kills some of the Guardians too. He goes off in that. So I was a Kyle Rayner guy. So you're talking to the right person. We can't go into that though.
Yet.
Exactly. That's the next podcast. So conversely, we've talked about a number of things. Is there anything in specific that isn't working? It seems like single issues are still something that is a bit of a struggle in general.
I think single issues as a business proposition are difficult. You're paying a lot of money for what amounts to a chapter of a story. And it's fine if you've read comics all your life and you're used to it. And it's like you're getting the next chapter of your favorite soap opera every time you go into the shop.
You're the frog, the boiling frog.
Exactly. But so we're there, we don't notice. But for new customers, it's hard to tell them, look, you can buy, issue 1 of Gods, or for the same price, you can buy volume 1 of Demon Slayer. You can buy, volume 1 of Saga. It's just as a pricing thing, single issues are much more difficult to push on someone. They're more complicated because here's issue 34 of Amazing Spider-Man. Oh, like the other ones? No, but I can already like a volume 1, a volume 2, and then you keep going in singles. It's different, and a lot of the new customers are used to different ways of doing things. They used to, again, a lot of them grew up reading manga, reading graphic novels, Amulets, serialized series where they go and pick up volume 1 and it starts there. They don't have to read anything else. And they don't want necessarily to come in and pick up an issue of, Batman, and then they have to read Catwoman and the other spin-offs and all these things. It's very difficult to get new customers into comics. Sorry, and by comics, I mean single issues. Let's just be clear. Not comics as the art form, not comics as the medium, single issues.
So would you say that in terms of single issues in specific, that the bigger issue is creating interest in your customers rather than like the varying challenges on the publisher distributor side of things? Or is it pretty difficult to disentangle those two sides?
everything is mixed together. That there's no, there's no magic bullet. There's nothing here that if it changes, the entire industry is going to be fine tomorrow. It's nothing like that. I think that the industry has changed, and it keeps changing, and it has changed in a macro sense and in a micro sense. I think things are just different from what they used to be. That's not a bad thing. That's not a negative thing. Things are different. It could be bad for some shops. It could be good for other shops. I think that we are in a situation where we're dealing with different priorities from the publishers we work with. We're different with different priorities from the suppliers we work with, from the creators that we work with. It's very different business than what it was 2 years, 5 years, 10 years ago. But that's something we'll be here again talking in 2 or 3 years, how different things are then to what they are now. That's not going to change. I don't think there's a magic way of solving this. I'm not sure if this should be solved. This might just be the new status quo. It might be just we have to get used to things like this.
Yeah. I mean, you put it very eloquently. It's like, how do you choose between, like, let's say the first volume of Chainsaw Man is 192 pages and it's also $9.99. So you choose between that or like very roughly 60 pages of Story for Gods. In terms of the cost benefit analysis, it's very difficult to advocate for one over the other, or very difficult to advocate for Gods over Chainsaw Man. Now, I'm a person who owns both. So, but I'm also a weirdo. I'm not the person you really want to look at for this sort of thing. But it is, I mean, that's part of the reason why it's like been very obvious as to why manga has done so well, is like it provides a good product that is often very good for a reasonable price for typically a fair amount of story. Manga's still like cleaning up for you guys, right?
Oh yeah, like we're still like next week the Blue Lock Volume 1 is getting a new direct market edition. And I'm getting more copies of Volume 1 of Blue Lock than I'm getting of any new Sean Phillips and Brubaker graphic novel.
Well, which
that's a lot.
I was going to say they're doing well for you still, right?
Yeah, they're still like our number one OGN guys, but I'm getting more of Blue Lock Volume 1. And Blue Lock is up to Volume 9 now. But I know I'm going to keep selling them for ages. I'm going to keep selling them to libraries. And also, if I sell a Volume 1 of a manga series, there's a good chance I'll be selling Volumes 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Whereas one of the things we do with single issues, we have we have a reduced space for single issues compared to what we used to. We have around 2 bookshelves for single issues. On the right side, there's the single issue that came out this week. On the left side, there's issue 1s. We keep issue 1s there, jumping on points. People try things. The amount of people that buy an issue 1 and never come for issue 2, never ask for issue 2, they never follow up. Whereas with the manga, I'll have kids coming in tomorrow, Saturday, and pick up a Volume 1 of Chainsaw Man or American Academy, and they'll come back on Sunday and buy Volumes 2, 3, and 4. It's a different market. It's not a worse market. It's not like both things are not. Manga isn't replacing comics, isn't replacing graphic novels, isn't replacing anything else. People tend to think of things in absolutes. Manga is taking over. That's it. That's the industry of comics is there because manga is the next big thing. No, they're all complementary.
Also, if they're in the shop, that means there's a possibility to sell them on something else. It's like, oh, you like...
Ooh, difficult. Very difficult. See, manga customers don't really go for other stuff. It's very hard. You can sell them like, manga action figures. You can sell... No, historically, it's incredibly hard to get those customers to translate to other things. The only book I really had a crossover hit was the Tom Taylor Seven...
Seven Secrets.
Seven Secrets, yes.
Well, that's basically a shonen manga itself.
Exactly, and that's how it worked because it's a language and it's a visual medium that they recognize. But it's very hard to get someone that's buying, and not just kids. Like at this stage, a lot of the manga customers are in their mid-20s, early 30s because they've been reading manga for that long. It's very hard to get them to get out of the manga shelves and get them to go into the graphic novel shelves.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying it's like theoretically it's easier to sell to somebody who's already coming into the shop than somebody that isn't. And so you have one step. I'm not saying the second steps can be followed, but okay, to close, I want to talk about some larger things. I joked earlier about the end times being here for the direct market, but I did want to ask about the general tenor of the conversation about all that because this week The conversation was led by an article by retailer Phil Boyle on ICV2 that originated as a post on retailer forums and emails to Marvel and DC leadership, which was all about the demise of comics, not just the direct market, but comics, the art form, and what the big two publishers need to do to fix things. Very short version, beyond some very questionable stuff that was in there. There was things like about US price point needed to be back to $3.99, fixing discounts and shipping, following a minimum advertised price, fewer covers, editors who are apparently editors being necessary as opposed to the editors who apparently are doing nothing now, fewer new characters, and finally keeping all those nasty politics out of comics. You mentioned earlier about how you can't really like pay attention to everything that's going on. You can't really pay attention to like things that are happening outside of your control because all you can look at is like what's happening in your world, basically. How does that stuff affect you? Do you just try to keep your head down and keep doing the work? Or is it important for you to keep an eye on all that, even though I'm sure your experiences are unique from what Phil's shop's Coliseum of Comics have been seeing?
I read that post originally when Phil put it up on the retailer group. I do agree with him in a lot of things. I do think that this is not a thing about comics, it's a thing about single issues in the direct markets.
Sure.
You know, a lot of the things that he says do apply to a lot of the direct market, a lot of the comic readership. The single issue comic readership is not the same as the OGN, it's not the same as the manga readership. And I think that it has been such a try to get those new customers that sometimes the old customers got left behind. I do agree with some of the stuff he said, not necessarily everything, but every shop has a different experience. Every shop deals with things differently. There are things that could be done better for everyone in the direct market. There are things, I think you had an article a while ago about things that we think retailers could help change the direct market. And one of the things I said could help improve the direct market. One of the things I said was more communication between the publishers and the retailers on what's selling, what's working, what isn't. I do think that's not happening at the moment, and that hurts everyone. I do think, look, I don't think we're going to go back to the way things were. And I think some shops are going to handle it. Some shops aren't. Some shops are going to have to pivot to different things. Some shops already did, and so they're not feeling it as much. Some shops will do a completely different business in 2-3 years. Steve Anderson will rule the world from Third Eye Comics. We all know this. Some shops are really good at being on top of things, and some shops, not that they're bad, but some shops will find it harder to pivot into the new markets.
So I told you before we started recording that I had something I wanted you to read. It was an article I wrote. And that's kind of like, that's one of my big takeaways from this is you have to be willing to change. You mentioned that earlier yourself. And like, there are things that need to be fixed, absolutely, in the direct market. But I do think that sometimes that the direct market fears change in all facets of that business.
I think the direct market still follows the Stanley rule of, the illusion of change.
Right.
In the end, for years, people were complaining that, Diamond is a monopoly. Diamond has all the rights. Diamond, this, Diamond that. And then when other people came up and started supplying comics, all of a sudden they're all evil and Diamond was the best. And, you have to support Diamond.
Right. That is... It kind of reminds me of like the comic fans themselves. I talked to Dan Slott one time where he told me something along the lines of when Superior Spider-Man came out and people were furious because like, I can't believe he did this. Peter Parker's my guy. Like this is an abomination, blah, blah, blah. Those same people are the people who, when things switch back to normal, were like, wait, I like that. I want to go back to that.
We saw that in our store when we remember when it first came out and fans were like, this is the worst thing ever. And then when Peter Parker, I like the other guy.
Yeah, it was a great book.
You also have to remember that most retailers are at their hearts comic fans.
I know. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying is like there's a reason why there's commonalities between the reactions of comic fans, and it's the sense that they are that at heart. And I do think it's interesting to look at the ones who are succeeding, like you guys are doing well, like Steve Anderson is doing super well, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a lot of the ones who are kind of more willing to change with the environment.
I think, but I think you have to, because otherwise, if you stagnate, that's it. You die. And again, I'm not saying that other shops are doing things wrongly or poorly. You can only do the best you can for the shop you have, for the market you have, for the the customers you have. But I do think if tomorrow all these changes that were in that in Phil Ball's idea were to happen, they'll work for some shops, they'll not work for everyone.
Yeah.
There's no magical cure again to all the problems. It's that was Phil's idea based on his shop, on his markets, or what he sells, what he doesn't. If you ask other people, they're gonna have all their different ideas of how to do those particular things.
That's why I think it's one of the difficulties of pieces like that is that some people can look at them as representative of like the direct market as a whole. And there is no shop that is representative of all shops at all, even in the slightest.
No, and you have shops that could be like 5 stores down from the other shop, and they'll be completely different with a completely different readership, completely different market. There's no uni minds of comic book retailers. There's no uni mind of comic book shoppers. It's all completely different.
Yeah. I love that you just made a Unimind reference at A+.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Exactly.
Eternal references, yeah.
One of the big points, I would say like the one that people probably have glommed on the most to is the price point. I mean, glommed on to in a way that is like, yeah, I agree with that, is the price point element. Have you found that the single issue price point beyond like the $9.99 ones, I'm talking about the regular ones, has started to cause a little bit more consternation amongst your customer base?
Not so much consternation as just people dropping things, or people less trying, or less willing to try new series, less willing to try new things, because all of a sudden when a new comic is like $4.99, $5.99, $6.99, $7.99, you go, wow, I can get lunch for that money. It's a lot to ask for.
Where are you getting lunch, man?
The local deli, like a chicken roll. It's an Irish thing. You wouldn't understand.
I know we don't have things like that. Like if you go to a gas station or like a deli or something like that, you're gonna just get questionable foods. You guys,
I'm not saying it's not questionable, but I'm saying it's cheap.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, like Amber, my wife, as you know, she absolutely loved going to UK and Ireland, but particularly Ireland, because there was all these gas stations that had amazing delis in it. And she was just like, why do they have better delis in their gas stations than we do in like all of Anchorage? I don't know. Ireland's awesome. That's why.
If you want to, there's another side podcast here about food in Ireland versus food in Portugal, but that's like another 2 hours worth of coverage.
I'm sure that you would have very strong opinions on that. But I did want to ask about all of this in the context of you as a human being, because I think it's very easy to get drawn into the malaise that's always around this stuff. It's very rare that people talk about the very positive things that happen in the comic industry or the direct market in specific. And there's a tendency to kind of fixate on the things that are going wrong. Understandably, it's not wrong to talk about negative things, but how do you, I don't know, how do you not bring that home at night? How do you not, like you said, it costs you sleep and stuff like that, but how do you separate and make it so that stuff doesn't make it so you become like a weird comic retail nihilist?
I might be too late for that. I'm not sure. I might already be like.
I talk to you all the time. You are not a comic retail nihilist. I mean, you still love things. I'm not saying that others don't, but at the same time, it's like you don't seem like it drags you down in a major way. How do you do that?
There is a part of me where I have to think of it as a job. It's a thing that I have to do. It's a thing that
it's because it is a job.
It is a job, but it's also, it's also my life. It's been my life for a long time. But also, I have to learn to when I get home and I'm there with my partner and we sit down and watch something, I can't be thinking of whatever Marvel is doing now. I'm just relaxing, and I have to do that. I have to be able to read comics for fun and pleasure, not just for homework.
Especially when Doctor Who's on.
Oh yeah, like big fan. But it's been it, and I think it actually, all the stuff I go through makes it more special when I read something unique that I really love. I think I love it even more. When Transformers was absolutely highlighted before that, to a power bomb, or last year reading the many lives of Layla Star, or sorry, the many deaths of Layla Star, the Ramsey book. The Zoe Torgood is Lonely at the Center of the Earth. They're just phenomenal books. And I think because I read so much stuff, when I read something that I really enjoy, it just sends even higher in the list. There's all these little victories every day. There's something really sweet about you being able to recommend something to like someone and you see them absolutely loving what they got from you, and they come back because they want more. At the core, we're all comic nerds. We all love comics. We all love to talk comics. We all want more people to read comics, and to be able to do that as my job, to be able to kind of you come into my shop and I put something into your hands. I go, trust me, read this. You're gonna love it, and it's such a pleasurable thing to do. I still look. I'll be honest. I'm 43. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I kind of ended up here somehow, and the fact that I'm lucky enough to be working in a thing I love, it's phenomenal. And I have to remind myself of that every time that I'm not. I could have a much worse life. I could be doing things that I absolutely hate. I get to work with comics. I get to read comics. I get to talk about comics. I get to share my passion with other people that love comics, and it's something very special.
It is special, and you do a very good job of it, Bruno. But that is actually all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about comic shops, Big Bang, Dublin cuisine, and everything else. I really appreciate you taking the time.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure. It only took like whatever 7 years to get here, but maybe I'll see you again in 2032. It'd be fine.
Hey, that's 9 years. It'd be 2030, man. Come on now. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with retailer Bruno Batista from Dublin's Big Bang Comics. You can find him on social media on the Big Bang Comics account and in Dublin at the shop itself. Love Off Panel and want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel, and when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site Sketched at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by following on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Rick Remender, Tom Drennan, Jeremy Thomas Burke, Jared Schwab, Scott Dunn, Chip Mosher, Alan Ellsworth, Seth Pomeroy, James McEwen, Kenny Myers, Andrew Lehman, Christina Merkler, Mike Cancel, Scott Place, Darcy Van Polgees, Travis Schmeiser, Tom Evans, Natalie Mockery, Reed Beeman, Kelly Sudaconic, Max Wood, Jeremy Lambert, Brian Holt, Chris Doré, Nir Levy, Dennis Hoffman, Jason Hussick, Kieran Gillen, Jonathan Kent Uratam, Henry Johnson, Jingo Boren, James Tynan IV, Chris Langford, Jason Wood, Tom Peachy, Ben Domstead, Rom V, Nick Walker, Patrick Coyle, Isaac Oren, Scott Carpenter, Rent Norb Studios Comics, Capes and Tights Podcast, Claus Vandeven, Brian, Submit Industries, Jack Mulqueen, Kyle, Carl Kerschel, Robert Massella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Canadian by Proxy, Bradley Rader, Carl Troy, Brandon DePillis, Patrick Brower, Declan Shalvey, Dan Guarino, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, Nick Bennett, Birdcage Comics Cafe, Susanna Polo, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Stephen Hull, Philip Myra, Chris Pachallo, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwan, Vita Ayala, Akil, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Nick Polito, Matthew Groom, Jason Nassie, Adam Bogert, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, Dave Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Colin McMahon, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Adam Highfill, Fiona Staples, Mark Abnett, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert Nicklo, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Wolfpack for letting me use their song Outro as the show's opening theme, and to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's outro and ad music just for the show. Check out both their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.